Hello, this is Michael Canadas with the Grovian Doll Museum in Pacific Grove, California. Today we have another presentation for you. I actually installed this exhibit about a month ago, and since I knew you were all coming, I uninstalled it and put it out where we could photograph it properly for you so that we could get it up close and personal. We've left the 18th century, now we're in the 19th century, which was after the Revolution. It took a good 60 years for the French economy to get back on its feet. The program that I'm going to give you today actually is a little twin of the program that you're going to have tomorrow, which is the Here program. Tomorrow's theme is White Lace and Promises. As we were preparing that, it was very nostalgic for me because a lot of the pieces that we're using, the linens and things, are family pieces. And as I was going through them, each piece, looking at it, studying it, getting it prepared, I found one with a little tiny hole in it. And the hole, rather than being patched in the linen work, was buttonholed. It was such a precious napkin that it was saved for me to use now, probably 100 years later in my family, perfectly mended, which reminded me that in this modern age, clothing and textiles are disposable. They're disposable like plastic or anything else. In the 19th century, the most valuable things you had in your home were in this order: your silver, and then all of your textiles. Then your furniture, then your paintings, etc. Textiles were so incredibly valuable. As the doll market started to boom in the 19th century, there was opening up many opportunities for people to make it big. One young lady was a lady by the name of Maison Béreux, and she landed herself a job working for the Here company. And from that, she opened her own business, Maison Béreux. This piece that we're sharing today is one of her original wardrobe dolls. And if you notice, a Here would be about this size, but if you look at the little tiny girl that we have, which is actually a lady, she's maybe 7.5, 8 inches tall. Just a little, simple little German doll. But what she has is anything but simple. Now, I think there's another thing that a lot of collectors don't realize today: how precious cotton was. Remember, we had a civil war over cotton. So this little doll has an incredible wardrobe of cotton pieces, all beautifully stitched by hand. Not everything is by hand, but all of the white work is by hand. Isn't that amazing? Now, if you shorten these dresses, because this doll is meant to be a lady, if you shortened them, they wouldn't be any different than a Here dress, which is a teenage girl or young girl. What is interesting about this doll is whoever ordered it ordered a tremendous amount of white work, but everything is monogrammed. Look at that little tiny monogram. Every little white piece of underwear. And there was also, with this doll, was bedding. A lot of dolls that have original trousseaux have bedding, because a bed, a girl learning how to manage a household of linens was an important part of their job. And then if they're not monogrammed like so, then they will all have a little individual monogram. And this was for when they laundered it, so they would know who it belonged to. So I know that whites are not the most exciting thing for the viewers to look at when there's all these silk dresses. But as a sewer myself, it's in the white work that you really see the skill of the person. I should tell you, Janine Béreux started out in a family that was, they had a perfume business. So in the 1860s, late 1850s, 60s, there was a lot of competition for them. So this was a great direction for her to go into, getting involved in the doll dressing, because that was an emerging market. So this was eventually their perfume shop became a doll shop. And in the shop you could buy dolls with trousseaux, you could buy just a doll, you could buy just a dress. This piece came to us completely original. There's nothing that's been added to it, in the original Mademoiselle Béreux trunk. And you might say that trunk is awfully big for this little tiny doll, but everything was laid out in a presentation fashion. So it wasn't like say a late 19th century presentation. All the whites could be laid out, displayed. It truly is, without a doubt, a Béreux trunk, because this was part of a hat stand, and it became detached. And I flipped it over and see that's the way it should be in the trunk, but they just used a calling card. And then it tells all their specialties here of the types of dolls that they handled. So we're going to look at now at the costumes. And what I believe is that these fabrics could be why you would create a little tiny wardrobe like this, is you would have a certain amount of leftover fabrics. If you have a big order from the Hire company and you have these leftover fabrics, you could certainly turn around and make some smaller costumes, and that would help. That's a very smart business because that helps your profit margin. So we're going to start with this piece. And this is a robe that you'd wear around the house. And I haven't had the time yet to watch the Philadelphia exhibit that is part of this event. But I noticed in one of the photographs that there was an identical robe to this, but in a larger size, like a Hire size. So here you have the beautiful chalet wool, the chantilly lace, and then the watered satin. And it's really in amazing condition. I mean, look at the size of that. Beautifully styled. It's gorgeous. And then you've got your sack back. Fashion's always looking, before they look forward, they look back. So that's in a very much an 18th century style. And then, of course, at the time, the Empress of France was Empress Eugénie Montijo, and she was half Irish and Spanish. So you have this wonderful little skirt and a little bolero jacket or Figaro jacket. It's got lots and lots of different names. And of course, you can see the soutache trim that would be utilized on many, many creations for the Hire doll. This is actually a linen. It's a very nice linen, and I have some shirts from the 1980s that are very similar to this, and guess what? They're going to all become little dresses like this, but beautifully styled. I haven't put clothes on her because at this point, I don't want to do anything. She's a tough little bird, but I don't want to do anything to damage the costume. So she's not going to get to wear these. And here's another variation of the little soutache suit. And you've got basically looks like very natural silk with a little light corally gold colored dye, and then a little tiny black ribbon trim. And if you notice, the jacket is kind of large. That's because it could go over the skirt. Beautifully styled. And then with that, you would wear this little teeny tiny blouse. And look at the little tucks on that. It's just amazing. Just amazing little miniature. This we have seen this in Hire costumes. Again, costumers out there, You don't need 400 different patterns to make a wardrobe. This is the same pattern as the coral piece. Almost no embellishments. There's 4 buttons and 1 hook. Today, materials are cheap, labor is expensive. In the 19th century, materials were expensive, labor was cheap. So you're not going to find an over-embellishment of items, of trims and things. So it's usually very, very sparing, the amount of things that were put on, very, very much planned out. The next thing I'm going to look at, look at how cute that is. So you have a little scrap of silk. This is a watered moire. And you've got some little scraps of lace. And you can turn this into a profitable little piece if you're a good business person. And I think the next, and again, here's another piece. That could have been a little scrap off of a Hure order, what was left, and they turned around and made a little wrap or a little mantle. Just beautifully done. It's very interesting. The pieces in this wardrobe that would have been highly criticized by the consumer are top-notch. If you see something that they probably wouldn't flip over, there's some work that to me looks like it was done with a hot needle. Meaning it was done quickly and to the point. Here's another piece too that I think is very interesting. Americans don't realize that what we call denim actually is a French material. And even though this is very tiny, tiny little print, this is basically a denim skirt. And just very simply with it's not a soutache. Well, I guess it is a kind of a soutache. Very, very tiny scale soutache. Again, this could be worn with a white blouse. Very simple. Or you could actually mix and match that piece. So, this is one of my favorites. And this is a wonderful little gown. When this was new, it was a bright blue. This is a color that, without no one abusing it, just over time turns to a green shade. But you can see under the blonde lace a little bit of the original blue. This is we call this blonde lace, but basically it's Chantilly lace, just white, and beautifully styled in the back. And here there's some hot sewing going on because they're going to cover it with the laces. So they didn't, they moved pretty quick. But again, beautiful shape. All the dresses have the same pleating to the waistline. So they were basically working with one pattern, making it work for all their pieces. And here is another amazing piece. And this I have seen this in a Hure costume. So again, I believe it's a scrap that she used. And again, beautiful Chantilly lace. That the lace was originally black. Some black lace turns brown. It just has to do with the dyes. And again, you can see very sparing with the embellishments. But really the wonderful thing is the mini piping. And look at the seam work in the back. It's very hard to do this on such a small scale, but they managed to do that. And then the front pleats, again, that's something that's very hard for us to do, or darts, excuse me. Darts are very hard to do today. The black piece, I'm not going to handle it because it's very fragile. It's fragile, again, because of the dyes. It has nothing to do with handling. It's just the dyes can do that. So the best thing is to not handle it. And again, notice something here. We have basically the same pattern. So we just have a different treatment with the ribbon and the beadwork and a beautiful Figaro jacket. I love that. And again, this could be mixed with many different things to create different ensembles. We have one piece here that's very fragile, but I believe it was once part of a ball gown situation. And these just blow my mind that someone sat and did all that work, that little tiny work. And if you note the button here, there's a little tiny button, beautiful buttonhole. That would, on her corset, which she's wearing right now, there's a place to button that on the front of the corset, so it keeps everything together. So this is a really amazing little study group of what was going on in the 1860s. What I find fascinating about all these pioneers in the French doll making world at that time, which, there was a large number of women involved in it. They were all young. When Mademoiselle Béreux started her company, she was in her 20s. And also, one thing I think is also interesting is most of them had about a 30-year lifespan in business. So evidently in the doll world, you've got a good 30 years and then it's time to hang it up. But I think what happened is, like most things, these were beautifully crafted, handmade, expensive. There's nothing about this project here on this table that was cheap. And as the century started to go on, things became cheaper and cheaper and cheaper, and it just became not worth it economically or artistically to carry on. So this is one of our newest exhibits that we have, and it's here for people to enjoy. And I hope that at some point you come and see this little diminutive treasure. Bye-bye.